Sit back and get comfortable, friend. I just threw another log on the fire. You know, I was listening to how young people celebrate New Year's Eve today. The bass thumps so hard the windows rattle, everyone's shouting, someone can barely stand by 10 o'clock in the evening, and I'm not grumbling, no. Every era has its own music. But it made me remember other times when transitioning into the new year wasn't an explosion, but an elegant bow. Times when the celebration had manners. And there was one man who conducted these manners for all of America for half a century. His name was Guy Lombardo. If you're younger than 50, you've probably only seen him in old black and white newsreels. He wasn't a rock star. He didn't jump around on stage smashing guitars. He was the embodiment of stability. He had perfectly slicked back hair, an impeccable tuxedo, and a smile that said, "Everything's going to be all right, folks. We survived this year. We'll survive the next one, too." His music. Oh, that's a separate conversation. His band was called the Royal Canadians, and they played what was called the sweetest music this side of heaven. It wasn't complex jazz or fast swing. It was music you could dance slowly to, holding your loved one close and still carry on a conversation without raising your voice. The saxophones sounded soft, with that characteristic vibrato, as if they were trembling slightly with emotion. It was the sound of comfort. From 1929 right up until the mid-70s, if you lived in America, your new year didn't start until Guy Lombardo waved his baton. First it was on the radio, then on television. Let me transport you to a typical living room in the 1950s or 60s on New Year's Eve. It smells of Mom's perfume, Dad's cigar smoke, and the Christmas tree. People didn't sit around in sweatpants. Oh no, this was the night you brought out your best. Men in suits, shoes shined to a mirror finish, women in evening gowns with hairstyles that took half the day to create. And this is where those midnight manners came into play. A party didn't mean chaos. It was a ritual. It mattered how you held your glass, how you asked a lady for a dance, how you greeted your hosts. In a world that could be terrifying outside that window, the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, Vietnam, that living room was an island of civilization. We held on to these manners like an anchor. They gave us the feeling that we were still human, that we had dignity, regardless of what tomorrow's newspapers might say. And the center of this universe was the television set, tuned to the broadcast from New York. Guy Lombardo usually played from the ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. It was the place where the cream of society gathered. On the screen, we saw couples whirling to the sweet music, confetti slowly falling, balloons. It looked like a fairy tale we could all touch through the screen. And then midnight approached, the climax. Television showed Times Square. There, out in the cold, stood a crowd, hundreds of thousands of people. They were freezing, they were jostling, they were waiting. And above them, on the flagpole of the one Times Square building, hung the ball. In those days, it wasn't high-tech like it is now. It was a large sphere of iron and wood, studded with hundreds of ordinary light bulbs. But when it began its descent, this drop, the whole country held its breath. Those were the longest 60 seconds of the year, and this is where Guy Lombardo's magic showed itself fully. In the final minutes, he knew how to build the atmosphere not with volume, but with restraint. He spoke little, but every word was weighty. He was like an old friend who had dropped by your house to spend this crucial moment together. When the clock struck 12, the ball reached the bottom, a shout erupted in Times Square. At the Waldorf Astoria, people hugged and kissed, and in living rooms across America, husbands kissed their wives, shook hands with friends, and at that very second, Guy Lombardo's orchestra began to play the very same song, Auld Lang Syne, an old Scottish song with lyrics by Robert Burns. You know, it's a strange song for a holiday. It isn't cheerful. It is deeply melancholic. It asks, should old acquaintance be forgotten and never brought to mind? Guy Lombardo didn't invent it, but he made it the anthem of the American New Year. Why did it resonate so much? Because at that moment, when we were stepping over the threshold into the future, he made us look back for a second. We remembered those we lost that year, those boys who didn't return from the war, those friends whose paths had diverged, parents who were no longer around. It was a minute of collective memory wrapped in sweet music. Those were the very same midnight manners in action. We didn't just celebrate the arrival of the new, we respectfully saw off the old. We acknowledged that time passes and that we are all in the same boat. There was something incredibly human about starting the year with a tear in your eye, not just with drunken laughter. Guy Lombardo died in 1977. An entire era went with him. New Year's became louder, brighter, faster. Dick Clark appeared, then others. The music changed. The manners changed. Now it's more like survival in a crowd than an elegant ball. I'm not saying it was better before. I'm saying it was different. Sometimes it seems to me that today we lack a bit of that Lombardo approach. We lack the ability to meet change not with hysteria, but with quiet dignity. We lack that pause to remember old acquaintances before running further. We lack a bit of those old-fashioned manners that kept us together when the world around us was going crazy. So this year, when the clock strikes 12, even if modern bass is thumping around you, try to stop for a second. Remember the sweet music. Raise your glass with dignity, and perhaps quietly hum to yourself, should old acquaintance be forgotten? All right, enough nostalgia, or I'm going to cry into my mulled wine. Let's check if you were listening to the old man carefully or just dozing off to the crackle of the logs. It's time for Brain Prime. Question 1. What was the name of Guy Lombardo's band that played the sweetest music this side of heaven? Question 2. From which famous New York hotel were Lombardo's New Year's performances most often broadcast? Question 3. What ancient Scottish song became the main New Year's anthem thanks to Guy Lombardo? Well, experts of the old school, let's check our watches. 1. His band was called the Royal Canadians. 2. It was the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, the epicenter of elegance. 3. The song, of course, is Auld Lang Syne. If you answered correctly, congratulations! You have taste and respect for tradition. You would definitely know which fork to use for salad in 1955. If you made a mistake, no trouble. The main thing isn't the facts, but the feeling. The main thing is that you are here today and you listened. It pleases me that we can sit like this, remember the past, and think about the future. If you feel cozy here, if these stories warm your soul, don't be shy. Join our company on a permanent basis. Subscribe. Here, we value good manners and good stories. I'm Pop Pop. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to old acquaintances and open to new ones. And may your new year be sweet, like that very music. See you next time.